Hey Raghunath, tell everyone about our Patreon community.
Sure, Kaustubha. The Wisdom of the Sages Patreon community is an incredible online yoga resource. If you like the type of yoga wisdom and culture we share on the show, then our Patreon community is a great next step. This is a listener-supported podcast, and any level of sponsorship will unlock a wide range of live and archived classes, talks, and even workshops.
Raghunath teaches, I teach, and we have a host of other excellent teachers on topics ranging from yoga philosophy, asana classes, storytelling, Ayurveda, kirtan, cooking, meditation, and a lot more.
We even have an incredible online Bhakti 12-step recovery group.
So if you want to check it out, go to patreon.com/wisdom of the sages.
All right, let's get it on.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host, Raghunath, and your co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show, and welcome to the Srimad Bhagavatam, the preeminent yoga teachings out of everything I've ever written on yoga. There's canons of incredible yogic epics. Out of all of them, the sage, the author of all of them, said, "This is the one. I give this to you. Take this, run with it. It's especially designed. It's like a yoga philosophy for dummies, basically. It gives you the essential teachings in one massive book, and we read this every day and go over it and break it down verse by verse." How are you, Kaustubha?
Doing good, Raghu. Did you, I did my my Monday, whatever we call it, Makeover Monday thing. Yes, I read my chapter Bhagavad Gita.
I did too. I fell asleep reading my Krishna story, though.
Okay.
That's how I did it. It was just going down. I was like, you know what? I got to bed late, and I was like, oh my God, I forgot to read my story. After all my barking, and I just sat in bed with glasses on and just fell asleep.
Okay. I know you were working hard yesterday, hard on the farm.
I was doing farm manual labor.
All right.
All right, I have nothing. I'm still sort of half dreaming. I woke up late today, woke up 10. It's old days, Mara. Mara used to come over, and I used to just literally roll out of bed and roll into the yogi house, and then, yeah. All right,
okay.
So let's dive in. We are in chapter 2.
No.
We're in chapter 3.
Yeah, we got a new chapter today.
That's exciting. Canto 2, chapter 3, text 1. Now, the name of this chapter is Pure Devotional Service, the Change of Heart.
Yeah.
And that's sort of what it takes. Everybody, we go down this road, and all of a sudden, we shift. The change of heart is sort of like how we say, I have a new set of lenses, or I have a different vantage point. It's a change of heart.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should we, maybe we can just do a little preface here.
Okay.
So again, what's going to happen, this chapter is going to, it's got kind of got two halves to it, you could say, that still dealing with the question of Maharaj Parikshit, what is a person meant to do, at the end of life? And we can understand is what are we meant to do with our entire life, because we're all approaching the end of life in one way or another. And then Shukadev Goswami is going to answer Maharaj Parikshit by saying that it's actually bhakti, hearing about Krishna, chanting about Krishna. These activities of bhakti, this is what one's meant to focus on. In the last chapter, he said, you could do different forms of deeply meditative yoga, mystic yoga. These are there, these are valid. But then he ends the chapter by saying, but actually, again, it's this pure devotional service. It's this pure bhakti. that is really the advised path to take. It's really the goal of it all in any case. So in this beginning of this chapter, he's just going to distinguish it one more time from the fruitive work, the worship of the devas to achieve material results. He's going to give a long list of, you could worship this deva to get this benediction, or you can worship that deva, this demigod, to get another benediction. So as we read through those, let's not get confused and think, oh, well, it seems like he's also promoting this. That's not, he's saying it's valid. It
This
works.
is going to be good. This is going to be good.
don't
You can get, I'm just glazing down. You can have powerful sex by worshiping Indra.
but he's not recommending that. He's not recommending.
What does that even mean? Powerful sex.
People have trouble performing sex. You know, they're very limited in their ability to do it. So it can be improved, and people try to improve it, you know, chemically. People try to improve it, you know, by whatever exercises or this or that. But he's not recommending that here.
Okay.
A wiser person would, you know, if that was.
See, this is why we have you explaining, because I'm getting, oh really? Worship Lord Indra, yes.
Okay, but then he's going to flip it, you know, in text 10 and 11, he's going to say, but this is the point, you know, is focus on bhakti. It's none of these things. And then then the second half of the chapter is like a whole nother thing. We won't get to that today, so maybe we'll just hang on to that for now.
All right, this is good. Sri Sukadeva Goswami said, Maharaj Pricket, as you have inquired from me, as the duty of the intelligent man who is on the threshold of death, so I have answered you.
Okay.
Text 2-7. I'm going to wrap it all together.
Mm-hmm.
One who desires to be absorbed in the impersonal Brahmajyoti effulgence should worship the master of the Vedas, Lord Brahma. If you're new to this, the Brahmajyoti is the light emanating from God. And so one idea is I'm going to try to get rid of my personal existence, of my physical existence, and just merge my soul into that light. One who desires powerful sex, okay, get ready, should worship the heavenly king Indra. And one who desires good progeny, should worship the great progenitors called the Prajapatis. So they're basically distinguishing sex between sex and progeny. So if you just want the good sex, Indra. But if you want the offspring,
good kids,
okay. I want lousy sex, but kids. One who desires good fortune should worship Durga Devi, the superintendent of the material world.
Mm-hmm.
One desiring to be very powerful. Look, everybody on Zoom is taking notes.
Durga Devi.
Durga, huh? One desiring to be very powerful should worship fire. And one who aspires only after money should worship the Vasus. One should worship Rudra, the incarnation of Lord Shiva, if he wants to be a great hero. One who wants a large stock of grains should worship Aditi. I actually do want a large stock of grains. I'm serious.
Okay, do you? What are you going to do with your large stock? Why not just
I'm prepping.
Oh, I see.
I'm a prepper.
Okay.
One who desires to attain the heavenly planets should worship the sons of Aditi. Mm-hmm. One who desires a worldly kingdom should worship Vishvadev. And one who wants to be popular with the general mass of population should worship the Sadhya demigod. One who desires a long span of life should worship the demigod known as the Ashwini Kumars. And a person desiring strongly built body should worship the earth. Interesting. Mm-hmm. One who desires stability in his post should worship the horizon and the earth combined. One who desires to be beautiful should worship the beautiful residents of the Gandharva planet. And one who desires a good wife should worship the Apsaras and the Urvasi society girls of the heavenly kingdom. Apsaras are society girls.
Society girls.
I'm not going to even ask that question. One who desires domination over others should worship Lord Brahma, the head of the universe. One who desires tangible fame should worship the personality of Godhead. And one who desires a good bank balance should worship the demigod Varuna. If one desires to be greatly learned man, he should worship Lord Shiva. And if one desires a good marital relation, he should worship the chaste goddess Uma, the wife of Lord Shiva.
Okay.
Want to hear something crazy? My
Sure.
6-year-old Tarun is going into like a homeschooling group.
Mm-hmm.
There's only 5 people in the group.
And he's about to take it over.
No, well, that's true. Not only that, 2 of the people in the group are named Uma.
Really?
How crazy is that?
Yeah.
One should worship Lord Vishnu or his devotees for spiritual advancement and knowledge, and for the protection of heredity and advancement of a dynasty. One should worship the various demigods. One who desires domination over a kingdom or an empire should worship the Manus. And one who desires victory over an enemy should worship the demons. One who desires sense gratification should worship the moon. But one who desires nothing of the material world or material enjoyment should worship the personality of Godhead.
All right. Let's read a little of this commentary on this one, right? So
Okay.
the shift was just made there. The contrast was just made there, right? You may want this, you may want that, you may want all these different things.
Sure.
But what about the person that's lost their interest in all this, that's come to the realization that happiness isn't found through any of these external things?
And this is the Bhagavatam. The Bhagavatam deals with people like all of the Zoomers here who are material, like Mara, who are materially exhausted in life. They're come to this point where they realize nothing of this material world can fulfill the gaping God hole in my heart. When you get really exhausted like that, you turn towards spirit. From a liberated person, this is the purport.
For a liberated.
For a liberated person, all the enjoyments listed above are considered to be absolutely useless. Only those who are conditioned by the material modes of external energy are captivated by different types of material enjoyments. In other words, the transcendentalist has no material desires to be fulfilled, whereas the materialist has all types of desires to be fulfilled. The Lord has proclaimed that the materialist, who desires material enjoyment and thus seek the favor of the different demigods, as above mentioned, are not in control of their senses, and so give themselves to nonsense. One should therefore not desire any sort of material enjoyment, being sensible enough to worship the personality of Godhead. The leaders of nonsensical persons are still more nonsensical because they preach openly and foolishly that one can worship any form of demigod and get the same result. This sort of preaching is not only against the teachings of the Gita and the Bhagavatam, but it's also foolish, just as it is foolish to claim that with the purchase of any travel ticket, one may reach the same destination. Good analogy. No one can reach Bombay from Delhi by purchasing a ticket for Baroda. It is clearly defined herein that persons impregnated with different desires have different modes of worship, but one who has no desire for material enjoyment should worship the Supreme Lord Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. So this demigod worship is real. If you're wondering about it, the demigods are real. They're like higher beings. And all over India, probably all over the world, because if you think like Christ, he denounced worshiping idols. In my brain,
sure.
that is sort of like worshiping of demigods.
I believe so.
Right?
Yeah. And, you know, in some previous show, we used an analogy. Remember when we're talking about, say there's a kid growing up say he's in a wealthy home, right? And he's got his selfishness that he's got to overcome. That's going to be his big challenge in life. And he's under the illusion that let's say he's lacking the appreciation, the understanding that everything that he has in life, his home and his food and all the necessities that, the heat that heats his home and, the water that he has in his home and all these things, he's lacking the appreciation that all of this is being provided for him. Right. That's analogous to like how many people move through this world. We have a body, we have an earth which provides food for us. We have rivers and oceans, and we have mountains that are full of minerals and so on that our very bodies are also made out of. We have rain, we have sun, we have moon, we have all of these things, and they're all
That was such a Hare Krishna thing you just said. You know that, right? We have minerals.
We have minerals? Is that
Yeah,
the Hare
because
Krishna thing?
Prabhupada always says stuff like that. We have minerals. The earth gives us minerals.
Okay, I think scientists use that word as well as
They say
nutritionists.
minerals.
Other people
Come on.
use that word. That wasn't like some of the other words that, like will of the wisp or something like that.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
So, but the point is that we might move through the world without even stopping to think that, hey, maybe there's someone behind all this that is providing this all for me. And so similarly, like this child, this spoiled child, let's say, this child that's an illusion may not appreciate that all of the comforts that they have in their home and all the necessities that are provided in their home, they're being provided by someone, and they should feel a sense of gratitude towards that person, right? Now, if the child starts to get that and thinks, and let's say we're saying this is like a wealthy home, right? So like there's maids, there's cooks, there's butlers, there's servants of all different types, right? Maybe even like gardeners and all these, but all of those hired hands, they're all engaged and empowered by the owner of the home, let's say the parents of the child, right? So if that child begins to realize, what, the food that's, if at one point you'd have asked that child, where do you get your food? The child said, I get it myself, but then the child begins to realize, no, actually it's that butler that provides does the butler bring the food? I don't know. It's that butler that provides.
Butler brings the food. Yeah,
the butler, brings me the food. And, the gardener is the one that kind of like creates it. It's the maid that provides my clothes or whatever, so then you could have, that child could write a book, if you want good clothes,
go to the butler,
worship the maid. Yeah. If you want good food, worship the butler, if you want this, that, and that is a step up for that child, right? Now that there's a bit of gratitude, which is countering their ignorance and their selfishness. But really behind it all is the parent. It's really the parent that's providing it all. So the next verse is going to say, so even if you want all of these things, it's better just to go to the parent, right? Because
don't give it away.
Okay, but that's the next verse. But even here, it's the reason why, like say the four Vedas may promote ideas of how you could worship the different devas to receive material things. The reason why they would provide all that information is because it's a first step, right? It's a first step away from ignorance and away from selfishness. It's a first step towards appreciation, but it's far from complete. The Bhagavatam is where you get that message complete. And so here we have, Shukadeva Goswami revealing the highest teachings. He blows through all this, not as a recommendation for something to do, but just to set up the verses that we're hearing right now. Here are all these different things, but an intelligent person isn't interested in this. A person that has really come to the right conclusion is going to go beyond all this. And they'll realize that my most important interest is not even gratitude towards the parents for providing all this stuff through the different representatives, but it's really the relationship that I have with that person is really what life is all about. Really uncovering the love that flows from parent to child and from child to parent is really the purpose to existence. And that's called bhakti, or pure devotional service.
This demigod worship, Kaustubha, I guess a lot of it's just passed down in a family, like in the same way I grew up Catholic. Mm-hmm. Someone will grow up worshiping the Ashwini Kumars, or
this is my family's Ishtadeva.
Your family's Ishtadeva, that for many, many generations they've been worshiping a particular demigod. So we grow up worshiping a particular demigod in the household. And that's how it gets, you know, even in my life, in my spiritual life as a kid, no one told me how to pray or what to pray for. I would pray for anything. I'd pray for a girlfriend. I'd pray for, revenge. I pray for revenge. Yeah. Hold on.
Revenge.
Maybe not revenge, but I pray for like victory. The football team prays to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
That's sort of demigod worship without the demigods, but you're praying to God for material things.
Well, that's what you just said there. I think is so clarifying. That people should, like, for instance, if someone's coming to, and someone maybe say he's even relatively new, but even if they're not, they may say, but wouldn't it be like sectarian to choose one of these gods or goddesses over the others? Wouldn't that be some kind of like, immature sectarian thought? But what Prabhupada is saying is here, no, it's not like that. That would be like saying, if I understand that my parents are behind everything and it's not the butler, that would be sectarian. That's not sectarian. That's just reality, right?
Yeah.
And so what in this commentary we just read, Prabhupada was saying that he was alluding to something called Panchopasana, or a way that Hinduism is commonly taught, that it doesn't matter which deva you worship, because in the end it all leads to the same place. And Prabhupada was saying, no, it's not. It doesn't all lead to the same place. You can't buy a ticket to Delhi and get to Baroda. Right?
Good analogy. The old Baroda analogy.
Yeah. Now, worship of the devas can, if it's all moving towards that parent, right? If my appreciation for the butler and the maid and the gardener is leading ultimately a path towards appreciation of my parents, then it is okay, moving in the same direction. But if one embraces an idea that no, it doesn't matter, parent or butler or maid, they're all on the same level. No, they're actually not. And so he's trying to clarify, and he's saying this is what the Bhagavad Gita teaches. This is what the Srimad Bhagavatam.
I was going to ask a question. I was just going to throw a question out there, but I think it's going to be answered in the next verse.
Okay.
I was going to say, well, what about praying for, the Super Bowl team is praying, please, God, let us win this game. Should we pray for material things to God, to Vishnu, or to the personality of Godhead, or to God, or to Source, or should you not pray for a material thing?
Okay, well, let's go there.
Yeah, let's go there. You want me to finish this purport?
Well, since our time is limited, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, it's all great. Sure,
okay.
Finish it. Let's finish it up.
It is clearly defined herein that persons impregnated with different desires have different modes of worship. But one who has no desire for material enjoyment should worship the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. And this worshiping process is called Bhakti, or devotional service.
Well, it's interesting, right? It probably used this word impregnated, right? And so impregnated, when you're impregnated, it's coming from outside, it comes inside, right? So he's saying, so he's saying that if you have material desires, if you're impregnated with material desires, it means it's something that's not core and essential to yourself. It's come from outside, right? I'll be happy if I get this. I'll be happy if I get that. Somehow from outside, we've gotten a message that our happiness is coming from something external. And when we're in that mode of thought, we'll have so many different desires. Well, let me worship this deva for that, and let me worship that deva for that. And life gets very confusing. He's saying that actually we should come to the point an intelligent person concludes that none of these things are core to my being. So they don't ultimately satisfy. They've been impregnated. They've come from outside and brought in. Let me work from inside out. Let me address what is my true nature. And my true nature is understood in connection with the divine, or with God. And so once you focus on that, you have a one-pointed desire. You don't have all these multi-desires, but that one-pointed desire to connect with that very source simplifies everything and gets right down to the essence.
You ever hear that Socratic? Ever hear that Socrates made this interesting statement about why you just can't enjoy the material world. It was sort of the fallacy of material enjoyment. There's 3 reasons why the material world is not enjoyable. 1, you want something and you never get it.
You want something,
right? It happens a lot. People want things. I really want to be. When I was little, People want it to be in a big band, or they want it to be a baseball player or something like that. That you want it and you just never get it. Thus, material life is frustrating. Number two, you want it, you get it, and it gets taken away from you. Right? Okay, I actually know some people. I know a few people. They actually made it. They wanted to be a baseball player. They became a baseball player. And then they got dropped back to the minor leagues, or they got an injury. Ever meet a person who's like a pro athlete and they get an injury and it's over? All their years of work, it's over. So
I
you
don't
want
think
something.
I have, but I'm aware that does happen.
That happens. That happens. Mara in her gymnastics career. Were you a
Ruined,
gymnast? No, her field hockey career.
It was a very promising field hockey career.
Yeah, right before the big game. But you could twist your ankle, ruin your whole field hockey career in a moment. So you want something, you get it, and it gets taken away from you. And the third one is, you want it, you get it, but it just doesn't live up to what you thought it would be. Ever get that? You're like, it's going to be great. And then you get the thing that you wanted, and you're like, big deal. Big deal. That is sort of like, I think everybody on Zoom here listening to the show is sort of at the place of material life where they're like, big deal. It's the material world. Big deal. Been there, done that. I think that's a big sort of internal statement to like advance in bhakti, is sort of big deal, been there, done that. Now what? These are all part of being exhausted in the material world.
Now we're getting some interesting questions here on the chat board, Raghunath.
I caught you looking at the chat board.
I just glanced.
Kaustubha always says, "Oh, you look at the chat board. You look at the chat board."
But I listened to what you said. I was listening to what you said.
You were listening.
You're talking about Socrates and the three different things. We got
what happens?
Our field hockey career. We got
what
into
happens
how
with
things
me
get them
is
and they don't satisfy.
That chat board. I made a determined effort never to look at the chat board anymore, because I'd always get caught like, trying to Kaustubha. And now I caught Kaustubha looking at the chat board. He was listening. You have the ability to like multitask. Like one eye goes one way.
I was right with you the whole time.
My head actually turns to look at the chat.
Well, not only that, but your facial expressions too. You're like,
Sure, my wife says the same thing. When I'm thinking of things, I start like, she's like, "What are you thinking about?" And I'm like talking in my.
My wife does that to me sometimes too. Like I start to smile. She knows that something's funny. I'm thinking of something funny. What are you thinking? So okay, we got
the chat board.
These are great questions. Okay, so Wankaji starts with, but the butler also has his part in this. No, I totally get that we should always remember the source, Krishna, but appreciation for demigods can't be wrong if we remember the source. No question, right? The bhakta, the devotee of Krishna, the Bhakti-yogi, they appreciate the demigod, great appreciation for the demigods, right?
Yeah.
But it's not, but they understand who the demigods are. Even most of the roles of the devas are actually played just by people like you and me who have achieved that role through a great level of piety, right? Through like incredibly good karma. They've taken on that important responsibility. So it's the well-adjusted child, let's say, right?
Yes.
They finally get the idea and the appreciation that it's their parents that are behind everything. That doesn't mean that they neglect or are unkind or unappreciative of
disrespect
of the butler. It means actually in that state they're more truly appreciative of who the butler is, you know, and they can show that in a very genuine way. Hunter continues, how would that appreciation for the butler leading towards the householder, the parent, how would that look? Is it just always acknowledging Krishna while worshiping, for instance, Aditi? And I'd say it's no, they probably would not worship directly Aditi. You know, they would and that's where this next verse is going to get to. They would keep the focus on the parent, right? But always appreciate, and especially appreciate the butler in relation to that parent. They would appreciate the devas in relation to Krishna or to Vishnu, you could say, and you know, who are in one sense both the same. For instance, like I have a painting of Ganesh as you walk into my home, right? Which is a very common thing in India. Like at the doorway, you put a picture of Ganesh, and I appreciate Ganesh, but I don't think Ganesh. I don't worship Ganesh for material things, and that's one of the real important. That generally, when it comes to the worship of the devas, and I think this question is going to kind of be asked here too, maybe by Wenkaji or something, but generally, that worship of the devas is done for the things of this world, right? Or someone may worship Shiva to escape the problems of this world and to merge into the oneness. Whereas bhakti yoga is practiced without those desires. It's pure bhakti. It means it's been purified of all those desires, and it's only for the purpose of divine love. So I think it's, Wenkaji says, maybe this question is silly, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Is bhakti always related to Krishna? I'm asking because I've met people that speak of bhakti, but don't include Krishna. Is Krishna consciousness a version of bhakti, or is bhakti always Krishna conscious? And
good question.
It's a great question and a very clarifying question. And if you go to Rupa Goswami, right, who's going to define bhakti in the book, the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, he'll say, Anyabilashita shunyam karma jnana anavritam anukulyena Krishna anushilanam bhakti rutama. He's talking about pure bhakti, and he's saying that it's free from material desires, it's free from desires for liberation, and it's focused on Krishna and favorable to Krishna, right? So there are, I'm aware that there are the exception to the rule. Like, for instance, I understand that there's a type of Shaivism called Kashmir. I'm very uninformed on this, so I don't want to pose like I know but I've heard that Kashmir Shaivism is the idea is that Shiva is the ultimate source of all, and he's worshipped without material desire. He's in other words, and the idea is to worship him purely without any material desire. But I would say that would be the exception. It's unusual. Generally people approach the devas for the things of this world.
Here's what Google says.
Yeah.
Google Prabhu.
Yes.
Devotional worship bhakti means devotional worship directed towards one supreme deity, usually Vishnu, especially in his incarnations as Ram and Krishna. And then it says, or Shiva, by whose grace salvation may be attained by all, regardless of sex, caste, class, etc. It's practiced by the majority of Hindus today. Okay. So this is where I think where Wenkaji's question emanates from. You go to the kirtan scene, and oftentimes in the kirtan scene, you have a lot of people who don't have a particular lineage. They're just sort of like, hey, I like kirtan. I like singing. I used to sing in high school or, in college, and I like yoga. And it's like, I can play that harmonium. Let's just start singing different chants. Yeah. And there's a plethora of gods. It's all God. Ultimately, we're all God. I'm God. Ganesh is God. Vishnu is God. They're all good. And I want to, who knows? They all might be right. I want to get all my bases covered. Let's sing to all the gods. I need a little feminine today. I'm going to sing to Kali. I need a little masculine today. I'm going to sing to Ram. And it just becomes sort of like a salad bar of different demigod worship. Yeah. But you find that people practicing bhakti, they're singing the Mahamantra, they're singing Govinda Jaya, Om Namo Shivaya, Jai Sri Ram, stuff like that. Yes. Well,
I found even that, was that Wikipedia that or Google? What was it that you just
I don't know. I just put it through Google.
Okay. But even that, I felt that it was more or less right on, in the sense it was close. That it said, generally this is done to Vishnu or Ram. These are called Vishnu Tattva, and that's part of the chat board here too, is just getting into that. If I worship Ram, if I worship Narasimhadev, any of those Vishnu incarnations, those aren't, you see, like Indra, Raghunath may have been Indra in a previous life, and he may be in a future life, right? It's like, yeah.
The good sex comment.
That was.
Where'd you bring that? That's the only time we mentioned Indra today.
You may have been
Powerful
Brahma. You may have been
Thank you,
Surya,
okay.
the god of the sun. You may have been,
Thank you.
any one of these devas. And all of our Zoomers and all of our others, we may have played these roles, but none of us has ever been Lord Ram. None of us has ever been Lord Narasimhadev. That is Krishna playing that role, right? So we call that Vishnu Tattva. So if one worships them, again, generally they're approached for pure devotion. Now this is real important to distinguish, because someone may say, oh, they're practicing bhakti because they see they're doing puja, for instance, right? This seems to be an offering of devotion, and bhakti is the yoga of devotion. But what in this definition by Rupa Goswami, where he says it's anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma janavritam, he's saying that pure bhakti is free of the motives of wanting the things of this material world, karma, or the motives of jnana, of wanting liberation from the suffering of this world. It's purely out of love. So, someone may be worshiping, doing this puja, even to Krishna, what to speak of the other devas, but their motive is to get the things of this world, or their motive
you can
is
worship a demigod with pure love.
Well, my point is, generally that's not the case.
Right. I wonder if you could. I worship, Brahma just with love, because I love him so much.
But let me stick with this point then.
Okay. Sorry.
So they're doing the puja. They're offering the lamp, and they're offering the incense, and they're ringing the bell, and they're saying the prayers. But if the motive is to get the things of this world, then that's not actually bhakti. That's not actually love. And we can understand that something like this, that say someone was say a man was proposing to a woman, and he was using all the words of love, right? He was saying, I love you. I want to make you happy. I want to spend my life with you and provide for you and dedicate my life to your happiness. And that is, that'll be my greatest happiness. But she knows that behind it all, he's got a motive, a separate motive, right? He wants her wealth, or
right.
she's famous, and he thinks that by marrying her, he can become famous. There's the motive actually isn't pure. It isn't, although he's speaking words of love, externally there's a demonstration of love. But it's actually a bit of a facade. And underneath it, there's a separate motive. So similarly, if I'm worshiping a deva, or even if I'm worshiping Krishna, and doing all the external activities of puja and so on, but my motive is to get something from Krishna, whether it be the things of this world, or whether it be liberation from the sufferings of this world, then that's not pure love. It's, I want something from you, and once I've got it, I'm not so interested in you anymore. Right? There was one time Srila Prabhupada was on one of his morning walks. He used to walk every morning. His students or his disciples would walk with him, and they were on a beach somewhere, and there was kind of like a bit of a little hill to get it, like a big step up to make. And so one of the disciples helped him, was on top of that level and helped pull him up, take that step. And then when he pulled Prabhupada up, Prabhupada pushed him away. And then the disciples a little confused, like, oh, did I do something wrong? Why did he push me away like that? And then Prabhupada said, this is what he said the Maya bodies are doing, right? In other words, those that are, whose ultimate goal is something separate from divine love. They approach God with a separate motive. He says, once they get what they want, then they push God away, right? Once I get the things of this world, or once I get the liberation that I'm looking for. So it would be said that even though that so bhakti isn't just the external activity. More important is the motive, or the internal mood, right? The internal purpose. The purity of that internal purpose is really what bhakti is all about. So therefore, even the puja may look like devotion, but if its purpose is material, or if its purpose is for liberation, it's not actually pure bhakti. I hope that gets to most of the questions on this. There's a busy chat board on this topic.
Chat board's going crazy.
Yeah.
Do you want to read any more? Or are we good?
I think we're good. Maybe Wenkaji can give us a nod if we're addressing it. I don't see Wenkaji. Where'd she go? She's on some other level. Okay. Why don't we keep going? But the end of this commentary is nice. Why don't we keep going with it?
Okay. For fulfillment of material desires, one may worship the Supreme Lord, but the result of such worship is different, as will be explained in the next verse. Generally, the Lord does not fulfill anyone's material desires for sense enjoyment, but he awards such benedictions to worshipers of the Lord, for they ultimately come to the point of not desiring material enjoyment. The conclusion is that one must minimize the desires for material enjoyment, and for this, one should worship the personality of Godhead, who is described here as Param, or beyond anything material. Sripad Shankaracharya has also stated, Narayano Paro Vyaktat. The Supreme Lord is beyond the material encirclement.
So Param, generally means, here it says beyond anything material. It means higher, beyond, So the parent is Param to the butler, right? And Narayan or Krishna is Param to the other devas. And then Prabhupada, by saying Sripad Shankaracharya, who's he's the authority of the Mayavadi idea of the path towards liberation as opposed to bhakti. But he's saying even Sripad Shankaracharya will say that Narayana Paro Vyaktat, that Narayana is beyond everything material, is beyond the devas, he's beyond everything. He was there before everything else. Okay.
Now, this is a famous verse.
It's a famous verse.
There's always famous verses that masters from centuries ago have quoted. This is one of the famous ones. 2, 3, 10.
Got a little poetic kind of alliteration to it as well.
Yeah, I'll do the Sanskrit. Akama sarvakama va mokshakama udaradi tivrena bhakti-yogena yajeta purasham param. A person who has broader intelligence, whether they be...
Okay, so even that right there, right? We just talked about people that whose intelligence isn't so broad.
They have intelligence because they're accepting that this stuff's not coming from me. It's coming from some source.
Right.
But so I'm going to appreciate that source.
But here's the person with broader intelligence. Okay.
Person with broader intelligence, whether they be full of all the desires, or without any material desires, or desiring liberation, means the world is painful, I want the pain gone, must by all means worship the supreme whole, the personality of Godhead.
Okay.
So akama, no desires.
No desires.
Right? Sarva kama, full of desires, and moksha kama, you want freedom from pain.
Okay, so those are the three levels, right? Karma, jnana, and bhakti, right? The akama person, the karmi, they want the things of this world. The sarva kama person, they want the things of this world. The moksha kama wants liberation. But the akama, the person free from material desires, who's approaching only out of love, that's the highest approach. But here, what this verse is saying is that whatever you want, even if you want the material things, you're still better off going to the parent than going to the butler, because the parent is the one that's ultimately behind it. And by association with that parent, your love for that parent may gradually develop, right? Which is the goal.
The interesting thing is, I feel like all my in the beginning parts of this path, I guess in the later parts of it also, but the very beginning, we all get tested. Do you want Krishna, or do you want the thing, or the thing that you're attached to? And we get to this point very often where we feel like, you know what, I just want Krishna. So oftentimes there's a letting go of something I'm attached to on our journey. Raghunath Swami took his harmonica and he threw it in the Ganges. He took off his
device.
Right. And he threw it in the Ganges. So you're all going to have to throw something in the Ganges. I'm looking around the board, Elizabeth, Daniel, Joe, Ariana, you're going to take something that you love and you're going to be like, I'm going to offer it, give it away, and let go of this thing that I love. Because you feel like this thing in one sense is holding you back from where you want to go. And something, my harmonica, But yeah, gotta let go of it. And in the letting go of that, a lot of you have found this out already, and I found it out on my path, is you actually get it back. You actually get it back. You're not asking for it back, but you get it back anyway, but in a more refined way. What do you think about that?
Yeah, well, you know, or that, and or, you know, in the previous commentary you read, that it said that that Krishna will grant that desire to the devotee. But there are other places where he says, but he'll grant it in such a way that you'll get your realization that that's actually not what really gives me happiness, right? That you get that Socratic what is option number 3, where you get what you want, but you kind of realize, you know what? It's not that, it's Krishna. It's Krishna that I actually want, right? So you may get it and realize that it's Krishna beyond this, or you may get it and in a different way with a different understanding, and that you appreciate it. You know, it's really as simple as this, is that illusion is when something, and actually in this canto we're going to read, it's coming up before too long when we get to the 4 core verses of the Bhagavatam, you know, the Chatu Shloki, the 4 verses. But that illusion means that that whatever we see it disconnected from God. And reality is when we see everything connected. So like one of the questions was, okay, how do we see the butler then? If we understand that the parents behind everything, how does the devotee see the devas? They see them in connection to God. They don't see them separately from God. So they appreciate them, even love them, right? Love Lord Shiva, right? You love Lord Shiva, don't you?
Love him. I love him. I do. I meditate on him every day.
But the way that the Vaishnavas understand Vaishnavanam Yata Shambhu, he's the greatest Vaishnava, right? He's the best devotee of Krishna. They understand Ganesh in relation to Krishna. They understand Indra in relation to Krishna. And they appreciate them in relation to Krishna. So they see everything connected. And so like you're saying, I may get that desire, and I may get in, it's Krishna may grant. So like here, this verse is saying, even if you do desire stuff, worship Krishna, you're better off that way. Because then you have Krishna, okay, I'll grant it to you, but I'm going to grant it to you in a special way. I'm either going to grant it to it in a way that you'll lose all your attraction for it, or I'll grant it to you in such a way that you'll see it in connection to me. Right? So it's always advantageous. Akama, sarva kamava, or moksha kama. And then it says udaradi, the broad-minded person. This is the broader-minded person will have this understanding. And then it says tivrena, that you do it with this word tivra. I looked it up in the Sanskrit dictionary.
Ooh.
It means like strong, fierce, you know, like intensely, you know, or fiery, like that. It means, you know what, focus on this and get serious about it, you know, like really dig into this, you know. So tivrena Bhakti-yogena yajeta purusham param.
You know, Prabhu, Krishna also doesn't want us to be in pain.
No.
And so a lot of times our things that we're attached to, even that we're excited about, you know, they cause us a lot of suffering. Mm-hmm. And so Krishna gives them back when we've relinquished them, because he realizes, okay, that attachment is now gone. Now that the attachment's gone, you won't be suffering. You won't be pulled by this thing. This thing doesn't own you any longer. You know what I mean?
Deep realization there, Raghunath.
I'm quite deep.
I know.
And I saw it in my own life with music.
Yeah.
You know, I quit my band when my band was on paper, materially, really what every kid in a band wanted. You had success.
So what was your motive in starting a band originally? What would you say?
I mean, I liked the idea of playing music. That was one motive, you know, doing what I liked to do. I thought, you know, it wasn't sort of like I'm going to make a lot of money, but it was probably more like subtle. I felt like we had a message, a good message. I felt like I wanted to establish myself as a singer. You know what I mean? Okay. I wanted to, you know, it was probably for
a little bit of fame,
a little bit of position, and
a little prestige,
adoration, a little adoration, perhaps.
Stepping on that stage, people are
cheering.
On the
stage, people. Okay. You know, and as the band got bigger, my attachment was there, and my position was there and that prestige was there. Although the pain that goes with that was so great for me, like I was just, forget it. I'd much rather walk away from it. It wasn't even that hard to walk away from.
So that was the Socratic thing where I got what I wanted, but it wasn't all that I wanted.
Yeah, I mean, I did it when I was a kid, but people do it in the workplace, or they feel that in the workplace, but sometimes they've already invested years of university, tens of thousands of dollars, and they've climbed up a corporate ladder only to realize, I don't want to be on the wall that this ladder is leaning on. I'm climbing this forever. And I don't even want to be here. And they have that success, but they have that misery of just an emptiness. And they're just like, what do I do? I have all the accoutrements of success, but I don't want to be here.
So that was also your experience.
That was without the tens of thousands of dollars investment in the university and all that stuff. But
your dedication,
yeah. And I appreciated what I did. I mean, a lot of times people love what they do, but material success can cause a lot of pain within it. So I felt that. Here's what happened. I gave it up.
You let it go.
And then Krishna gave it back to me years later with another band, but with the
different motive.
Yeah, with the different tools of how to use that energy. Okay, you're going to be famous. Here's the tools to how to deal with fame.
Right.
Here's what you don't do with fame, and here's what you do with fame.
Right.
You're going to get prestigious. Here's how you handle that energy. People are gonna want to interview you, or you're gonna fly over the world to play different gigs. This is how you're gonna do it. And what happens is Bhakti gives us those tools, how to use the material way, so we upgrade our life instead of degrade our life. Otherwise, successful people oftentimes just degrade their life.
Can you give us a hint about like how you deal with it? Like what were those tools? Like, in other words, you're saying that someone's interviewing me or whatever, how you saw it the second time around.
The simplest sutra would be, do it to serve God instead of be God.
Okay.
That's the simplest way to put it. Right. Do it to serve God instead of be God. But that actually will actually play out. Like, I'm not trying to, like a lot of times people who experience fame, you get a very, very intense dose. And I've explained this before. You get a very intense dose of a high. Anyone who's in a band out there knows it's like 23 hours of just like driving around or flying around or going somewhere for 1 hour where you get on stage and do your thing. And then it's like, okay, you got to go back to the hotel. You got to go, wake up. You got to get back in the vehicle. You got to drive to the next place. 23 hours of getting to that place for that 1 hour. So a lot of times people who are famous, they'd like to extend that hour. Like, how can I get that same high that I'm getting on stage? So they use drugs, They use sex, They use any type of intoxication, so they can medicate the pain of not being in that high position anymore. So they can, once you get off stage, you become lonely because you're not that person. You have a few people say, let me get your autograph. But eventually it's just like you in the hotel room. And sort of, how do you keep that high? Well, you medicate that pain. So one way, and it sounds simplistic, but it's not. You realize if you're on stage meditating like, I am the servant of this message, or I am the servant of God, then you're not getting your high from like, yeah, me, you're worshiping me. Yeah, you think I'm cool. If you're caught up in the ego, you got to get ready when the ego goes down. And then you're caught on a much more extreme highs and lows than regular people. Regular people have their high and low like this, but people who have like material success in their workplace or fame and popularity, they get a very intense peak and then a very intense low when they get off that peak. So it makes for real depression and sadness and so yeah, one of the things was just the regulative principles. I'm not gonna take drugs. I'm not gonna plow through women or men if you're like they're things or objects. So once you control your senses and control your mind, you're free to sort of move forward. And once you realize, and if you do get fame, we have in our mind that says, this is just a spark of Krishna's splendor. This isn't even me. This is some gift that Krishna is using me for something else. And that really protected me, knowing that in the back of my mind.
I think you've given us a lot to think about this morning, Raghunath. Thank you for that. That was great.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Thanks for waking me up, Kaustubha. My Kaustubha alarm clock. Do you remember those alarm clocks when you were little, like the Superman alarm clock, the Raggedy Ann alarm clock? Anybody remember that?
Kind of.
Barry, you don't remember that? The Raggedy Ann and Andy alarm clock?
No.
Oh, man. I've become that old guy. Anyway, thanks for everybody joining us. Thanks all these Zoomies who wake up on a regular basis. If you want to join the Zoom posse, you can. You go to wisdomofthesages108@gmail.com and you send an electronic mail to Mara, and she will give you the codes to get on Zoom. And if you're one of the others out there listening on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcasts, we want to hear your story. Tell us how you got here, if you like the show, etc. And we'll read it. Everyone will read it. We all want to learn your story. Go to Apple Podcasts, write a little review, and tell us your story. Anything going on today on the Patreon?
Yeah, we have Lori Pag teaching at 10 a.m.
Laura Pag, very wise, very talented.
And you're doing
Yoga
Sweet
teacher
Baby
from
Krishna
Rhode Island.
tonight.
It's Sweet Baby Krishna tonight at 8 o'clock. I'm excited. So that's what I tell. So if you'd like to join that little Patreon party, you go to patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages, because this is a community-supported podcast. We exist by the community support. So thank you very much for everybody supporting. And we have like a lot of the yoga school going on, as well as archives of old classes, stories, lectures by Kaustubha that we do sometimes in other places that we record. And basically, if you don't get a yoga class live, you can listen to one of the recorded ones we have.
Isn't it Sweet Baby Krishna tonight?
Yeah.
It's Sweet Baby Krishna tonight.
Raghunath will be telling Krishna stories at 8 p.m. Eastern Time.
8 o'clock to wind you down after a long, hard day. Now we sing. This is the real alarm clock.